Hey, welcome everyone to the From the Shadows podcast. I am your host, Shane Grove. And before we get started with this episode, I want to remind everybody that if you want to get a hold of us, interact with us, you can find us on Facebook at the From the Shadows podcast. You can find us on our forum page, which is called After the Shadows. You can find me at Shane Grove Author on Instagram. You can find us at the From the Shadows podcast on Instagram, or the good old fashioned way, go to our website, hit the contact button, email me your questions, your statements, or just share an experience with me if that's what you want to do, because we would love to talk to you if you have a paranormal experience that you feel like the rest of the world needs to hear, because I do believe by people sharing those experiences, it helps other people come forward, feel good about their experiences, or better. I don't know that some of them might not feel good, but at least gives you the feeling that you're not alone and that there's somebody that will listen and maybe help you figure out maybe a little bit what you did experience. And that being said, our guest today has some pretty interesting experiences, and I can't wait for him to share them totally with me and with all you guys. I just know a little bit, but I know just from what I've heard that this should be a wild ride. So, can I say you're from Mothman country? From Mothman country?
Yeah.
Because isn't that bridge is that the bridge in the background?
It sure is. Yeah, it's one of my photos from my visits there. Absolutely.
So joining us is investigator Joey Madia, not from the Tyler Perry movie. Although we discussed that, we wanted to make sure that Tyler wasn't going to get a hold of us and say, "Hey, listen, what are you doing?" But Joey, thanks for coming on the From the Shadows podcast.
Yeah, it's awesome to be here. I love your show, and it's really cool to be here. And I think it will be a pretty wild ride.
So let's just get into it. You're down there in Mothman country, and you are on the boots doing investigations in and around Point Pleasant. So, if that's a good place to start, unless you have some other stuff from that got you into, like, why did you want to become a paranormal investigator, or what event led you to decide this was a good idea?
I totally did not ever want to become a paranormal investigator, but nobody had ever asked. See, so I wasn't asked. So when I was 16, I had a really weird, semi-frightening experience with a Ouija board. Where some girls in school were messing around with the Ouija board. And it was the classic, the past 14 years of being a paranormal investigator, researching Ouija boards and reading books. And my mentor, Rosemary Ellen Guiley, wrote some great books about the Ouija board. I found out that there's sort of this narrative, right? Whereas it's this little frontier girl, and she wants to make friends, and she's really sweet, and she draws the girls in, but then suddenly she's being chased by this shadowy man who wishes her harm. And then the girls get all hooked in and they want to help this girl. So they're engaged with the board, but then you find out it's been the shadowy man all along. And then, so this goes on for like a week in the theater room in our performing arts wing in my high school in Point Pleasant, New Jersey, weirdly enough. It's all so weird.
That's what we call foreshadowing in the business.
There you go. That's right. We're both in the business. So they stopped coming to school. So we call them up and say, like, what's going on? And they're like, oh, this guy, blah, 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 blah. So my buddy Lou and I, a couple of Sicilian guys, were like, we're going to take care of this. No problem. Right? We're in Jersey at the shore. So word gets around that Lou and I are going after school to go. So we're down in this basement. There's like candles on the ledges all around. And there's like 20, 25 kids crammed in this basement. And the two girls are on the board. And the guy's totally terrorizing them, spelling out all these threats. And I go, hey, if you're so powerful, do something to us. And I kid you not, like, the candles go out. And for a split second, the earth and my heart stop beating for just a split second. And it was scary. So 16 years old, and I'm like, oh, this is icky. Like, whatever. This is crap. This is garbage. I was always a kid who couldn't watch the horror movies. Like, I love them now, but when I was a kid, no way. And so fast forward to like almost 30 years old, and I meet my wife, Tanya, who has this amazing gift of psychic mediumship. And so suddenly every place we live, the ghosts are coming out. And then my daughter is born and she sees these things. We're down visiting relatives in Arkansas. And she was, I don't know, she's a little whip of a thing. She's like 5 years old. And she's like, it's the drums of the soldiers. We have to go. And it's like twilight in the Civil War like era graveyard. And so I kind of sort of had to deal with it. So now it's 2009 and we buy 3 acres in a hollow in West Virginia, about 2.5 hours, a little less than 2 hours from Point Pleasant. Now, we were fans of the Mothman Prophecies movie, right? I'm a screenwriter. I'm an actor. Best thing Richard Gere's ever done. Laura Linney, Will Patton, they're all sensational. And Mark Pellington, like, did a really great job directing that movie. The soundtrack is gorgeous. So I was like a fan cinematically. And so Tanya one day says to me, you know, she's like, this is based on true events. So we get the book, the John Keel book, and I go, frankly, this is like absurd and weird and Men in Black, you know, it's Will Smith and it's comic book, like this is nonsense. So we built the house in 2007. 2009, Tanya goes, we are only 2.5 hours from the world's only Mothman museum. And I said, a museum about something called like, you're nuts, right? And so although we had dealt with like hauntings and weird stuff and balls rolling down hallways and our daughter being kind of strange, there was nothing. So
I like how you go. Wait a second. I like how you gloss over and our daughter being kind of strange. Just gloss over that. Okay.
Yeah. Well, no, I love her dearly, and she's a very talented psychic medium as well. But it all came across as like very strange. Like, I was raised Catholic. People say, like, when did you first get into the paranormal? And honestly, I grew up in it. Transmogrification, raising from the dead, hagiography, right? The saints, miracles, wounds that smell like roses. Like, I was well versed in all this stuff, but as it was coming at me in my own home, it was just frankly very strange. So I put my wife off for about 6 or 7 months. I don't want to go. And she's like, well, I got a sitter for the kids. Let's just call it a romantic getaway. And fell in love with Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Stuck in time on the Ohio River, which I feel like it's 14 years later, I feel a deep soul connection with. I love it. I now live not far from the Ohio River in Ohio, about 4 hours from Point Pleasant now. So anyway, you go to town and you sort of do the thing. There's sort of rituals. You go to the Mothman Diner. Carolyn Harris, who passed away a number of years ago, and we became really close. And of course, inevitably, you go to this museum. And there was a dude there, and he was very nice. And we were like, yeah, first time in town, and we love the movie or whatever. And there's this thing called the TNT area, right? The whole wildlife preserve, former Superfund site with these igloos, which are cool enough on their own. Cement, used to store TNT from the West Virginia Ordnance Works during World War II. Oh, this is very cool. And I also hear whispers, and I've been pursuing this for 14 years, Shane, and I have no answers, about some kind of naval base or naval laboratory or something in the West Virginia, Ohio River area, which makes no sense to me. But anyway, so I'm
really
intrigued.
A naval, yeah. So they're
some like kind of naval base or naval something.
So it's like a secret base that.
Yeah, nobody knows anything about it. Even people who have lived in Point Pleasant all their lives, and they've investigated it for me. I just designed an escape room for the Mothman Museum that's about to open in the next couple months, and I had those people looking into it because I wanted to incorporate it. I don't know, it's a very weird thing, but you can find these weird newspaper articles online referring to this naval base near Point Pleasant. It's weird. It's very weird. But the Navy is weird. Naval Research Labs and all of that. So anyhow, they give us a map to go down to the TNT area. Well, we go to this store tchotchkes, souvenirs, all that kind of stuff. And it was owned by a guy named Bob Landrum. Bob has also passed. Now, Bob is cool. We walk in, and this looks like Elvis and Johnny Cash have had a love child, right? He's got the DA with the pompadour. He's got cigarettes rolled up in his sleeves. Cool dude. He's got a draw, and he's like, okay, man. He's like, that map ain't going to do it. Like, I'll draw you the real map. And he's like, and it's a Native American burial ground, and there's a spirit there. So we're like, okay, well, we're cool spiritual people, so let's buy some sage from you, and like, we'll go down there. Okay. So we go down 60 to anybody who's familiar, who's listening, knows this well. And we go down to the TNT area where there's igloos like 1, 2, and 3 at guardrail, and you can get into them. It's this beautiful day. The sky is beautiful, beautiful blue. Get out of the car, and we are scared to death. We feel like we could die at any moment. Came to find out later, John Keel calls this the zone of fear. It's this irrational, your sensing systems are going weird. And I said to my wife, this is bizarre. Like, I grew up in the Jersey Pine Barrens. Like, my dad thought he saw the Jersey Devil one night. Like, I'm versed in this. And I'm scared to death. I used to camp in the woods, Poconos and all that. So we managed to go to the first igloo. I like barely stick my arm in, take a couple photos with a digital camera. And we're like, okay, we can see that second igloo up ahead, and supposedly that's the one where the Native American spirit is, and let's try to go there. We can't make it to the second igloo. Like, just before the second igloo, I go, babe, like, I'm done. I want out of here. This is bizarre. I have no idea what's going on. We take the sage, we put it down, we leave. We get in the car. And we had come down. It was probably like 2:15. It's like a 15-minute drive. We were there no more than 10 minutes. We get in the car. We're driving back on 62, I believe it's called. And we're trying to process. And suddenly we turn to each other. And this is like a millisecond that completely changed our life over the last 14 years. And we both say to each other, did you see that? And said, this little voice in my head goes, don't tell her what you saw. Don't let her tell you what you saw. Draw it. Go somewhere and draw it. So we get back to town and nobody's around. Now it's small town America. You go 3:30 on a August afternoon and in summer. It doesn't make sense that no one's around and everything's closed. So we go back to the tchotchke shop. And we see Bob in the back doing something. I knock on the door, and I don't know if we glanced at a cell phone or it was a receipt or something, but suddenly we realize it's 5:15. We've lost like over 2 hours, just like gone. It should be like 2:30, 2:45, and it's like 5:30, something like that. So Bob lets us in. And we say, look, we had this really strange experience, and we saw this thing, and we have no idea what the hell it was. We're not even telling each other. We're going to go somewhere and draw it. And Bob says, give me your card. I want to, tell this to some investigators. It's like, okay, man, thank you. We go to a restaurant down the street. And we're sitting out back by the railroad trestle, and we draw this thing. Let's see. I don't know. With my background, I don't know if you'll be able to see it. But what was weird is Tanya and I perceive things very differently. We're a little bit like Benny and Barney Hill in that way, which is great as an investigatory team because we see different things. But I don't know if you're going to – never mind. You're not going to be able to see it. We drew – the same exact thing, framed exactly the same way, right? You write screenplays, so you know all about mise en scene and all that kind of stuff. It was this long black figure, cornfields on both sides, through the windshield with the road divider. And that's what we saw. We saw about 10 or 15 feet above the road against this brilliant blue, cloudless sky, this black figure. I always have described it as if a man in a neoprene wetsuit was fired out of a cannon, like with his arms at his side. I just saw it, and as it got to the cornfield on the right side of the road, it just sort of disappeared. kind of just blinked out. It was gone. Tanya said she saw it on the side of the road by the cornfield, and it leapt like a deer. And then same thing, disappeared. So this is August like 17th, 2009. We go back to our lives. We're busy. I'm running a theater company and an acting school. I have a copy editing business. Tanya's working for the university. We have 3 children. And we kind of just forget about it. Like, it was so weird, but whatever. And we forgot about it. Love the town. Love to go back. And November, we're leaving the Walmart in Morgantown, West Virginia, and I get a phone call. And it's a paranormal investigator. Tim and John Frick are pretty well known. They dress up as the Mothman. As the Men in Black, and they've been in all the TV shows. And they say, "Oh, we're really interested in your story, and there's a whole bunch of paranormal investigators that are going to Point Pleasant in November. Like, do you want to come?" And, like in a week. And I said to Tanya, "You want to go back?" And she said, "Yeah." So that's where we met Rosemary Ellen Guiley, who wrote like 65 books, and these other investigators who had devoted their life to Mothman. And we re-traveled the route. It was our first time since it happened. And we found out a couple of things. It was a much shorter distance than it felt like on the way back. Plus, we had the missing time. Exactly on the road where we saw this thing, yeah, there was a cornfield on the right side of the road, but on the left side of the road was a beautifully landscaped yard with a house that had been there for like 20 or 25 years. Also, on our way back, I distinctly saw a gas station, an old style gas station. The pumps were not digital. They were, more like analog pumps. And it had colorful flags all around it, like it was celebrating some kind of event, and it had a garage attached. And that gas station does not exist, nor has it ever existed on 62. So Rosemary has this equipment to measure energy levels, EMF, and so forth. And she says there's a portal here. So, okay. So we hit it off. They find us credible, and we become really good friends with all these people. And we turn into what Rosemary dubs the Mothman Irregulars. So suddenly, I have a wife and a daughter who are both psychic mediums. We have a Lakota sweat lodge on our property through some connections that we had. Now things start to happen. Big orbs are coming across our property. There are knocks on the back of the house, which are kind of like Bigfoot things. Everybody's having strange dreams. There are little fairy lights running around our living room that we say nothing to anybody. Yet a Shawnee chief that we know comes over to our house and goes, "Oh, you have little people running around in your corner right there," like strange stuff. There are sycamore trees where there should be no sycamore trees. It's like all this weird stuff is happening. So we sort of embrace Rosemary's offer to mentor us. And that was 14 years ago. And we got more and more involved. We were properly trained as paranormal investigators. Then we have a couple books come out. We're starting to do the podcast circuit. We're talking here, talking there. We're on coast to coast, blah, blah, blah. And someone one night, it was Dave Schrader, I believe, Midnight in the Desert, goes, "Have you guys ever been regressed?" This is like maybe 2020. It's prior to the lockdown. And we said, no. And no one's ever asked us. Rosemary's never suggested it. It's never occurred. He goes, could be interesting. And Tanya says, yeah, and maybe things you don't remember, you're not supposed to remember. And Dave says, yeah, well, that could be. And so Tanya is getting all these certifications in Reiki and yoga and massage. Then she says, I want to do hypnotherapy. Then I want to do past life. So she goes to school for this, and we're starting to learn about it. We go, okay, this seems pretty credible. Like, this could work. This could be okay. So we know some people that we trust. They do 2 separate sessions. We get them recorded. All this stuff comes out. So we send the tapes to like 7 or 8 different really credible paranormal investigators. Rosemary, unfortunately, had passed away by that time, and said, what do you think? And they said, yeah, this seems credible. So I'll pause there because I talked for a really long time.
I don't even know where to go back for. So it's funny, the interview I did last night, the lady had a couple, she called them near-death experiences, to where she's, was taken to saw something happen, knew that it wasn't in this time period, but also knew that and one was a little girl that she was standing behind. She knew that was her. Okay.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And so in that instance, we were talking about what happened, and I asked her the same thing. I said, have you ever had any regression type thing where you go back and she goes, and her answer was no. I just figured it happened once and that's it. I don't need to know, if I needed to know any more about it, I would need to know. So I'm super curious then how that worked for you guys, and how did it change then, your lives going forward? And what?
Yeah.
And how does it affect your wife, who has that psychic ability anyway? Does it mess with? I don't even know. You're gonna have
to. So all I can tell you is what the digital recording said, and then I'll show you an illustration that a friend of mine who does this he's a professional artist, and he's done this stuff for some of the cable shows, people describe things and he draws them, and he listened to the tape because he was curious, and he said, "You mind if I draw this thing?" So all right, I'm just gonna tell you what the tape said, because this is 3.5 years later. I'm no closer to having a position on it. I only know what we said under hypnosis. Okay, so we were driving in the car, and we saw this thing. After we saw this thing, the car began to almost behave like a centrifuge. And as it did, I looked down and it started to go opaque. I could see the drivetrain turning, and then the car began to spin. And then suddenly we were in what you could describe as a parallel dimension. Now, prior to that, in the TNT area, the zone of fear, quote unquote, this is what was standing by the igloos.
Whoa, that you did not see, but you saw when you went back. Okay.
I saw psychically, and had not even a screen memory, because it wasn't like, oh yeah, there was a deer in the woods or anything like that. So it wasn't a screen memory. I just, only under hypnosis did I recall seeing this thing. And it's
frightening looking thing.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's got sort of like alien gray sort of eyes. It looks somewhere between a goat and a deer. It's very bizarre. And in the past 3 years, I've only found, I think there was an eyewitness maybe in Russia and somebody in the United States who saw anything ever similar. But it was sort of the old Twin Peaks, Whitley Strieber, the owls are not what they seem. It was masking as something. It was, and it looks like there's this old cave drawing, Alaska caves, I think, of a deer shaman or an elk shaman.
Okay, yeah.
It recalls that. Maybe it knew that I was in my mind. Okay, so we saw this thing, was why we were so freaked out. We put down the sage and we left. So then, like I said, we were driving, and then suddenly the car starts to go opaque. I look down, we can see the drivetrain, the car starts to spin. Now, did it literally do that? Probably not. We're probably in already some kind of psychic something. Obviously the car didn't do that literally, but that was the effect. And I wind up on what's like a movie set. It's a barn, and it's pristine, and it has this silver silo that's spotless. There are no animals. The ground looks like AstroTurf, and there are these weird beings. And all I can see of them, they're standing behind me, and I can see these long fingers, 3 long fingers, and they have bulbs on the end. So when we were kids, we used to take black olives.
Oh, yeah.
And then, yeah. And that's what it looked like. And that's all I can see around me. And they're saying, do you like this? What do you think of this? And I'm like, it's fake. I'm like, I make films. I This is fake. Like, you need to do better. Like, where's the animals? And they're like, no, just let. On the tape, you can hear me go, not a good candidate, not a good candidate, not a good candidate. And so the regressor, the hypnotherapist says, is Tanya a good candidate? And I go, oh, yeah, Tanya's a great candidate, but, I'm not a good candidate. So they kind of let me go. They sort of released me. But somewhere in all of that is the garage. And it was called Sonny's Garage.
I was gonna ask, did you get to the bottom of the? Okay.
I think so. Thanks to the work of Jacques Vallée. He and the name escapes me now, but there was a man in South America who had a very profound experience, and there's a whole documentary about him and all. And Jacques Vallée said they go into your mind and they pull out things to draw you in. When I was in middle school, I wanted to be an auto mechanic so badly. That's what I wanted to do. I loved cars. I wanted to work on cars. I wanted to have my own garage. And nobody ever called me Sonny, but I am a junior. I don't know. We could be stretching here. We try to fill in gaps. But they talked me out of it. The guidance counselors were like, your scores are so high. Like, that's not for smart kids. Smart kids go to college. So I did that whole thing. And I always kind of regretted it. So I think that was there and they could latch on.
They were feeding off of that in your head that you regretted it, not like outwardly every day, but they knew that it was there and they're like, okay, maybe we can play on this aspect of what he wishes his life was, and he might want to stay, right? Because that's what I'm getting is they're wanting you to say, I like this place, I maybe I'll stay,
or I'll come back, or I'll invest in it. It was definitely a psychological test. It wasn't. Now Tanya, though, we are not together. Just kind of like Betty and Barney Hill, right? They're taken to different places, have different experiences. Tanya is taken into something that looks like almost like a ship, like a circular room or whatever. She's on a table. They didn't do anything to her except take a black box, and this is all through the lore and the reports, like this handheld black box, and they're running it over her body. And Tanya, being Tanya and kind of well-versed in all of this, goes, look, are you going to be done soon? Because I got things to do. Like, I'm busy. Like, I can't hang out all day. So, but this is what she drew. And what's really interesting is the fingers with the bulbs.
Yes, I saw that immediately. I can't see it.
So that's the big overlap from our experiences. So how did it change our life? And what was it? Two different things. We had already had our show Into the Outer Realms. We had already done dozens of episodes. We had put out 2 books. We'd been on Coast to Coast, another big show. Spoken there. We were the ghost people. That's what we did. So I remember sitting in Emily's living room, and going with her and her boyfriend, drinking coffee and going, what do we do with this? I have no idea what to do with this. And go, oh, by the way, you all trust us. We've done cases for people, around the country and done all this stuff. Now we have this abduction. So I said to Tanya, I said, and this was in November, I think, of 2021. I'm almost positive. I said, we just have to do an episode about it. We have to show the photos, we have to tell the story, and we have to get it out of the way. And that's what we did. So we've been telling this story, but I don't. Take over, please.
So
guide me.
So I want to ask then, so when it comes to the traditional Mothman story, what do you think, or what is your opinion, or what have you learned? What does this have to do with that?
It wasn't that. And we're always very clear, we did not see the Mothman, this black thing that went over. And who knows why? We've studied a lot about geography. You have 2 rivers that come together there, the Kanawha River and the Ohio River, and they merge, right? It's Two Indy Way, where the waters mingle. It was Mary Hyre, the lead journalist. That was the name of her column. That's down there in Point Pleasant. So the geography is very interesting. The place itself is very interesting. There's a big debate about whether there's a curse. Chief Cornstalk, right? The Shawnee chief. There's no curse. And this is very controversial right now with the festival coming up and with some new books and things that are coming out. But for the 100th anniversary of Point Pleasant, a play was written and the Cornstalk Curse was put in. If you look at the history of Cornstalk being in Fort Randolph and them coming to kill him after the bloodshed and everything that happened with Logan and the Mingo and all, he would not have time to place a curse on the town. And I think it's sinful. The town has had incredible bad luck, floodings, all of this kind of stuff. The Silver Bridge, right? So here's what's odd. November of 1966 is when the Mallets and the Scarberries have their sighting, right? The Chevy, 57 Chevy and all down by the TNT area, and it's like game on. Now, as you do the research, if you look back, there were sightings in the weeks and months prior. It was not the first sighting, but it's the first big rash, and you have all the Marcella Bennett and all the other big sightings. So November, 13 months to the day, December 15th, 1967, the Silver Bridge collapses. Not paranormal at all. That's another really, really important part. It was a bad money-saving design, something called an I-bar bridge. There were not very many, like 4 to 6, I think, in the entire country.
I had, like I told you, I had an eyewitness on, and she starts telling me about this bridge. And I didn't really know anything, but she said you would go out on the bridge and it swayed.
Yeah.
Back and forth with the wind and stuff. And I go, wait a second. Like you could really, she goes, oh yeah, it swayed back and forth to the point where it was almost like an amusement park ride that you'd go out there and stand on it for fun. And I'm like, whose idea of fun is that? Like, and so you're saying, so of course that's a terrible idea.
And I think that was built in the design to diffuse energy and all. I'm certainly not an engineer, but these things were built in the 1920s. It was silver. That's why it was called the Silver Bridge. And it had these eye bars, and one of them failed. It got a hairline crack, but also, too, from the 1920s to the 1960s, more traffic than they had ever anticipated, and trucks got bigger and heavier. And a light malfunction, so everybody was stalled. It was Christmas. They'd go back and forth between Point Pleasant in West Virginia and Gallipolis in Ohio. People say that Mothman was on top of the bridge, all this nonsense. Again, it's sinful. It's disrespectful. The tragedies are genuine. So what was the Mothman? I believe he's an interdimensional traveler. I believe that there are portals in Point Pleasant. I interviewed on my show a guy who was very close with Rosemary Ellen Guiley, very credible. And he went down to Point Pleasant one year. We couldn't make it to the festival. And he said there are 2 dimensions, old time and modern dimensions, just coexisting with a very thin veil between them. I think that that's mostly geography. I think it's a combination of what the ground is made of and the rivers, the location, the whole mid-Ohio Valley, right? That whole Ohio, southwestern PA, and West Virginia, western part of West Virginia is very paranormally active. Very strange stuff.
Well, then you throw in the energy from the TNT.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, and we kind of believe that energy is the root to all this. I mean, nothing exists without it. And if you throw that much energy into a place where the veil is probably thin and other stuff is going on, who knows what kind of portal, like you said, it could open up and what could come, what could come in. And but I was in Point Pleasant one time, and we stopped there on our way back from the Outer Banks. And of course, my daughters and my wife were not super excited, but I said, look, when are we going to have another chance? They didn't really care if we had another chance, but they went along, and it was a Friday, and it was like 5:00, and we pulled up to the Mothman Museum and got out. And of course, they're closed up. They would not open the door to let us in. And I just kind of stood there. We saw the statue or whatever. And from that street, it seems to me like, I think if you look the one way, you can kind of see the river and see the bridge. And I just kind of wanted to stand there a little bit and see if I could feel anything. Not that I'm a sensitive person, but I'm going to tell you what, it was one of the weirdest feeling places I've ever been in my entire life. Like, I wasn't scared, I wasn't frightened, but it was just odd. Like, it just, like you said, at 5 o'clock, it was completely deserted. And I'm like, where's everybody at? We drive around a little bit and I'm like, I don't know where everybody has gone from this little town. Right. And even the McDonald's we went to is in one of the worst places I've ever seen a McDonald's. It's terrible to get. But
yeah. I know where you're talking about.
It's back there like in this corner, and it's like, this isn't like, the McDonald's guys didn't scout this location when they approved this franchise. I'm guessing. But it just felt odd. And and you said the same thing. It kind of felt different, and I don't know what that is. But you have a lot more guts than me. I'm an enthusiast. I'm not an investigator, so I don't know that I could even get dragged down to the TNT area, especially after hearing like Emily's stuff.
Yeah.
So you guys get this information, but I'm curious. So your wife, now, does she feel any more than what you're feeling as far as like the paranormal side of it? Is it?
Oh, yeah.
Like, what is she picking up on when you guys are down there that you're not?
Right. So we had an experience. I don't think Emily was with us that time, but we had an experience where she and Rosemary Ellen Guiley saw, a classic Hat Man shadow figure down there. Now, I did. There have been weird experiences in the igloos, and I'm sure Emily told you, some of those. And she had one with a friend of ours that I wasn't there for. One day we were walking though past the igloos. This was several years ago, and looked back, and there was this black shimmering mass, probably about a quarter mile away from us. When we stopped, it stopped. When we moved, it moved. I think a lot of that is there have been rituals down there. People have, in some of the buildings in town, have done certain rituals. It's a world famous place. Mothman is arguably the most popular cryptid in the world. I think he's more popular than Bigfoot. And why that is, couldn't tell you.
Because he makes a really cute collectible. He's cute on shirts. He's cute on shirts. He's cute in the plush, although I would never say that in front of Bigfoot, but that's just me.
Yeah. And Tanya's a big Bigfoot and person, but that could be. He's very, very marketable, and the story endures, and it's linked to things like, it's linked to several things, right? So you have Mothman in the middle, but there were UFO sightings. There's the whole Men in Black thing. John Keel is like a cult of personality unto himself. And Gray Barker, he was so odd. Gray Barker, right? Lived a double life. Very strange man, Gray Barker. And then, you have all of these things. Plus you have the bridge tragedy in a town of like 6,000 people, which is very much stuck in time and now has had this incredible renaissance. You can't get a parking space down there. I'm so excited for the escape room to open on the second floor of the Mothman Museum because it really kind of honors the story and all, which is odd. Plus, you have the whole Indrid Cold thing with Woody Derenberger, Tom Montalone, all that kind of weird thing. Where's the fact fiction line with Indrid Cold? Because it gets wild. Abductions to Lanulos, and Tom Montalone was actually hoaxing. Making stuff up. So Indrid Cold's most famous line, "I'll see you in time," was a fabrication of Tom Montalone's. Like, he didn't even say that to Woody Derenberger. It was very odd. So that's why it's enduring. For Tanya, people always say, well, you don't only get abducted one time. So obviously, you know, so how many more times have you been abducted? Oh, 0. But Tanya wakes up with weird bruises, strange memories. We've woken up on top of the sheets. She's woken up with her clothes, her pajamas on backwards or askew. So Tanya has this connection. She was staying with a friend in, let me get this right, in Kentucky. She was spending the night at a friend. She was in Kentucky for work. And her friend said, oh, did you have trouble sleeping last night? This is the next morning. Tanya goes, no, I slept through the night. I slept like a baby. And she said, while I was up, I have trouble sleeping. At like 3 o'clock in the morning, the light in your room came on, and I heard a man's voice talking. So I thought like you were watching like YouTube videos or you were on the phone with your husband. Tanya had slept through the night, yet this woman heard a man's voice. And so that's sort of a witness to whatever goes on with Tanya. We don't know. And they take advantage of her, especially when I'm not around.
How does that make, okay, so you know, or we all believe that this is something paranormal or something that, but how does that make you feel as a real live flesh and blood person that, you know, you can't protect your wife from something that may cause her harm?
Yeah, well, it makes you angry, but that energy is an energy that they feed on. So it's a fine line. And I've mentioned my daughter when we were living, you mentioned the Outer Banks. We lived in the southern Outer Banks. So we lived in a place called Beaufort on the Crystal Coast for 3 years. That's where we did our 2-year investigation of the most haunted library in North Carolina, which was where we really maybe a conversation for another time. We spent 2 years, 150 hours in the same building, cataloging all kind of phenomena, crazy. But there was where we lived, our townhouses were Army housing way back in the day, or Marine housing. And there was a ghost of some Army or Marine guy who would like peek in on my daughter in the shower. That was very upsetting. And she'd be like, Dad, don't worry. I just tell him, you know, like, William, just like, don't do this. Like, you'd hear her. She'd be in the shower and you'd hear, William, I'm in the shower. So you feel helpless. You feel helpless. You feel helpless when you know that you were just being a tourist because you love a movie and 2.5 hours of your life were not taken away from you, but where suddenly you were in something's hand, you know, that was trying to manipulate you, that was drawing on memories and showing you things like, you know, this thing. You know, this elk, goat, deer, alien thing, or laying your wife down on a table and running a black box over her. So it's been, you know, you said, like, when did you decide to become a paranormal investigator? Shortly after all this happened in 2009 and things started to ramp up in the holler in West Virginia, I said to Tanya, these things are studying us, and by nature, I have to study them back. Like, I am just curious by nature. I cannot be passive. And I think that father, husband, protective thing came into play. And, you know your enemy, right? Art of war and all that. Mm-hmm. I really think that's what motivated me. Now, it's become much, much deeper. I think people who say, you know, that demons are rampant and these, you know, rock star looking rock band biker group, paranormal groups who are like, okay, we're doing our third exorcist in our tiny town this weekend, you know, on YouTube are full of crap. I think there are dark things out there, but they're extremely complicated. And for someone like Tanya, who helps cross over spirits, Tanya and I have both experienced people come to us prior to their death. But there's this whole movement now in the field of, oh, no, they're just projections from people's lives, or they're trickster energies from parallel dimensions, and our consciousness does not survive death. There's always these weird pushbacks on things.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard, and I find, and I'm torn, you know, it's like, I want to give people the benefit of the doubt who are super religious, okay? Because I was brought up in church, and and studied the Bible and stuff. But the people then that draw the line in the sand and say absolutely anything that comes to you as a spirit is bad, is trying to lead you astray, is trying to play tricks on you. And I'm like, okay, so in the same breath, then if an angel visits me, I'm supposed to assume that I'm supposed to assume they're playing a trick on me, and you're always calling on the Spirit of God to. I mean, and so what is the Spirit of God? What is like? What are we calling into our lives? Are we calling some? You can't have it both way. You can't have it one way. It's got to be both. There's a yin and a yang. Even it's right there in the Bible. The alpha, there's good and bad. So it all can't be bad. There has to be some good. And I don't believe that it's just, what in religious ideology is just Jesus or God or whatever religion. There's other parts to that are good that you're going to come into contact with. Just like there's going to be bad. And I think it's short-sighted for people to say, draw that line in the sand and say, this is the only. I think those are people that don't really understand everything in its entirety.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the same with anything that goes on. When you don't study history and understand that, everybody thinks like what's going on today is so bad. Oh, geez, go back 10 years and then go back 20. I mean, come on, we're living in the same world we've always been. Politics and economy wise, it's just all the same. It's just there's little shades different, and everybody likes to. So I think people are so focused on right now, and they don't look at the bigger picture. And I mean, and then I can't feel any, I don't want to say I can't feel anything. I'm stone cold. I can't feel anything, but I don't have that kind of perception about the way so many people that I've spoken to and that you guys have interacted with too have. And it's amazing to me to hear what they have to say, and I really take offense to people just saying, no, that's not how it is. That's like, okay.
I think, I agree with everything you said 100%. And, this has led me down the road of studying quantum physics and really looking into Tesla. And you mentioned energy being behind, Tesla said, that's it. Vibration, frequency, energy. That's it. That's the whole lot. So there are things that we don't know. And are there parallel universes and matrices and, all these reports from all these theoretical people come out. But when Tanya, does a reading for someone, for instance, and they say, okay, she says, okay, so go in your closet in the spare bedroom, and under this hat box is this other box, and there are these photos, and your brother really wants you to have them. It's important. So the person goes up to that room that they haven't been in forever, a closet they haven't been in for much longer, and under this forgotten hat box is this box of photos. It could legitimately be the brother. It could be a trickster. It could be God or an angel trying to do somebody a solid. It could be a forgotten memory and a projection from the other person's, and Tanya simply mind reading. We don't know. So just like we don't know, like, what is Mothman? Was it a mass hallucination? Was it a hoax that then got legs and became almost like a tulpa or an egregore or something like that? I mean, we know from the literature, we know from all this experience that people are experiencing things in much different ways. You were talking about the Bible. I'm going to have a guy named Wallace Wegner on my show, and I've had Reverend Michael Carter on my show, who people will know from Ancient Aliens, and they talk about aliens in the Bible. And what Ezekiel saw, and the chariot, and were aliens, extraterrestrials, mistaken for gods? And what the hell is an extraterrestrial? Because now some people are saying they're time travelers. So the smart money is to keep collecting data. I'm lucky enough to have some experiential things that I'm trying to make sense of. I talk to people just like you two. I've done 170 something episodes of my show now. And it is this desire. I get the opportunity because I have a show to talk to people that I wouldn't normally talk to for an hour and a half who share data. It's data. And that's my approach. And maybe science and spirituality will catch up, but maybe we'll just never know. So,
well, I also wonder, like, so how many different times during the timeline have people come this close? Or because we're not the first. I mean, it's there in literature. It's there in photographs and painting. People have always wondered. Have always wondered, is there an afterlife? Is there spirits? I mean, for gosh sakes, like just the whole theory of Atlantis. So there's always been, and that's from Plato in those guys. You know what I'm saying? Like they're talking about a civilization that's just far advanced. So it's not like we're the first people. We're just in our minds the most technologically advanced, but are we? I don't know. I mean, I keep waiting for the Charlton Heston moment where, the Statue of Liberty is in the the Planet of the Apes. Like, when has this been destroyed? How many times and been rebuilt? Who knows? And you can go down that rabbit hole and get lost
the work of Graham Hancock is really fascinating. And saying a lot of these sacred sites are built on top of other sacred sites that are much older. And then, the whole gatekeeping of the pyramids being 5,000 to 6,000 years old. And it's like, no, they might be 30,000 years old. And what the hell is the Sphinx? And are there secret compartments like in the Sphinx? And you see all this stuff. It can be overwhelming. But yeah, we just kind of take it in and listen. And, this whole, I'm on a whole, Tanya is sort of semi-retired for different reasons. And so I said, well, I'm an investigator, but I'm really a historian. I'm really an investigator in the sense of parallels and patterns and crunching big amounts of data. So I'm going through the whole ufology thing. And I'm doing a whole series of shows now looking at UFO sightings, crashes, and all, which people say, oh, it's all BS. But if you look at everything that happened in 1947, so you have Roswell, you have the Kenneth Arnold sightings, you have 30 other sightings in the United States that have been documented in 1947 alone. And then the CIA is created, the Air Force is created, the National Security Council is created. It's the birth of Majestic 12, all within like a 6-7 month period, all constellating around Roswell. We can start to go, yeah, the government, the CIA was created. We compartmentalized because something was going on. And if we can do that with everything, with ghosts, parallel dimensions, and all this, listen to people. But then you have the Corey Goods, right? The 20 and back. So just when you go, the Mars missions, where people would go and be on Mars for 2 years and then rotate to the moon. And you go, just when I think I'm getting a handle and I know where the boundaries of the box are, they get blown out of the water by someone like a Corey Good. And who that, Phil Snyder with the underground bases at Dulce and firefights with reptilians. But then the guy dies under these weird circumstances with an oxygen tube wrapped around his neck like 6 times. We could go on and on. We've been talking a while. As you can tell, I'm fascinated and driven for answers.
Well, I wonder, and so I was listening because when I'm out doing the mail route, I'm listening to some other podcasts so that I, it's just gathering information, and it dawned on me, like, why 1947? Okay, and then in something I just said to you about the energy from the TNT. So what if we're testing the nuclear bomb and setting off a kind of energy that's never been set off before. And what if that is what set this whole last 70 plus years in motion? Like we blew a hole in different places, or gave the energy enough to allow these beings start coming from another side, because it, you know, because it wasn't like they just dropped those two bombs. I mean, those bombs were being tested all over.
Yeah.
All over. And so, I mean, because it's weird that seems to be the jumping off point.
Yeah.
And if they are truly creatures from other planets, did they see what was going on and say, well, we got to go investigate? There's that part of it. Or there's the thing that maybe we did blow up some holes and give energy where there was none. So gosh, we could go. So I want to ask, I want to go back to the little people in your house.
Okay.
What is that all about? Because the little people thing, I got to be honest, quite frankly, scares me more than Bigfoot, because I'm sitting here at a desk. There could be a little person under the desk. There's no Bigfoot under the desk. You know what I'm saying? So what is that all about?
Well, they're cross-cultural. So whether you call them fairies, fae, little people, kobolds, everybody's got the name for them. I'm sure there's a proper Shawnee name for them. Probably parallel dimension things that don't need to be 6 foot tall. They can just be teeny tiny, and they come through these portal areas. Now, I will tell you, when we were building the house, Tanya and I went for a walk on the property. We were staying with friends because there were all kinds of delays with our house being built in the middle of nowhere. So everything is a challenge: how to run the electric and rights of easements and all this. So we're walking down the one side of the holler and up the other toward our house. And there's some fallen logs and this kind of stuff, and it draws my eye. And Tanya and I get down on our knees because there's like this little fairy village. Like, I don't know what to tell you. We didn't see fairies, but the way the moss was and the way things were, it looked like you would expect like little fairies or gnomes or something to come out at any time. And I said, hand me the digital camera. And the minute I said that, it's all like barbed wire and crud and old tires and stuff. That was our introduction to the holler, and I saw a weird creature out our front window that I thought it was a bear, but then it elongated like a jaguar or a panther. And so that was just the
cattywampus. You saw the cattywampus.
Yeah, maybe so. Right now that you said that, it was bizarre. I'm like, oh, there's a bear. That's really cool and not unusual. We had a cow come through our we saw a beautiful albino stag that would come in that unfortunately a hunter got it. But a big rack and pure white, beautiful stag. We have photos of it like in the morning mist, very surreal, but not at all paranormal. So it was almost like a cattywampus kind of thing. That's right. And so it was bizarre. So the little people, we have this Lakota sweat lodge, and like I said, all of a sudden sycamore trees are growing on the property, and they're growing like weirds. Like sycamores grow very fast anyway. But like, where the hell did these come from? And the Shawnee chief was the husband of a colleague of Tanya's. So they come to the house to hang out. Now we're friends. And he's like, oh, sycamores. Very interesting. Like, where's the water? And like, there's no water. And he's like, oh, but that's where you have the Lakota Sweat Lodge. So it made perfect sense to him. And then, I would light the fire in our fireplace. We had a giant stone fireplace in a big living room with high ceilings and all. We love that room. And we would see these little lights. We'd see these little lights, and Tanya would have very strange dreams of things transforming. There's something called like a mole boy. It was a mole, but it turned into like a Native American boy. So there was so much energy, right? Tanya the way Rosemary Ellen Guiley would say it was, Tanya was like a psychic battery. So it's not that we always live in haunted places, which is what our books are about, but that we're aware of them. Whatever energy, whatever eye she has.
Because she is also helping power that psychic
Yes,
energy.
absolutely she is. Yeah, like Tanya will walk into a conference and someone will go, "Oh, you're Fae," or "Oh, you're from the Pleiades, like you're star stuff." And this has happened 7 or 8 times around the country with very disparate people who label them different ways. So is Tanya like actually not from here? Like when she was a kid, she would go through her parents' drawers looking for adoption papers. She was like, I'm not from this family. Was it some kind of memory? Was it just a denial of a kid who wasn't happy? Like, you have to allow for the mundane. You have to allow for the mundane as well as for the supernatural. So those little, their energies, their intelligences that were drawn, and were we, so the big questions become, were we drawn to that property? Were we supposed to be custodians of that property? Because I'll tell you, when it ran its course and we didn't want to be in the middle of nowhere anymore, and the kids were tired of the isolation, and we had winters where we couldn't leave for weeks at a time because it was that isolated. When it was time to sell that house, it took 2.5 years.
Really?
It was like the property didn't want to let us go.
So you wonder then who the people that bought it, were they similar to you guys?
We've never talked to them. They were a wonderful family. He was ex-military, had all the big toys and all the things he needed to live in the middle of nowhere, and had 3 like strapping young sons and a big like golden retriever. And their vibe might have been much different. Their relation to the land, the Lakota Sweat Lodge was not being used anymore, so it was taken down in a very respectful way. But we did all kinds of ceremony on that property and had all kinds of people who did all kinds of ceremony. We would meditate and do these different kinds of things. Now the property had a weird. Up the hill from us, there was a Muslim family that was building a house. And one day I came out of our front door and there was this flat rock where I would do a lot of meditation ceremony, nothing weird, but I just always hung out at that rock. And there are 2 women in full burqas, fully masked, doing some kind of prayer or something over that rock. And I never asked. We weren't close with our neighbors. What the hell? What the hell was that about, and why that rock?
Were they using it because whatever you knew about it, it was a good place to do that, or were they
an energy?
Or were they saying we gotta fight whatever? This it could go either way. Always.
Yeah, it always can. It can always go at least 2 ways, if not more. So, I think we bring to it, but then it intrudes upon us as well. Like I didn't, and we could go on, but I mean, was my resistance to going to Point Pleasant because there was something inside of me that knew that this, I mean, who knew we would have,
it was going to change your life.
Yeah.
It's essentially going to change your life. So what then is your opinion of what the Mothman is? Like, what is this that still endures today? Like,
yeah. So what it actually was, I think, was an interdimensional being that was drawn through the portal, the same way that the UFOs were. And again, not to deep dive, but the men in black can be somewhat spectral and interdimensional. I think they're different. There are government guys, you and I talked off camera about probably a government operative, but maybe not, maybe cooperative, maybe a Valiant Thor type. Why it endures, like I said, was I think you have a tiny town of 6,000 church-going people, like 20-something churches and like 1 bar in that town when this happened. Deeply religious. A couple prior to the Mallets and Scarberrys saw this winged, red-eyed being at the foot of their bed. And their preacher was convinced this was the devil. It was a demon. The devil had come to Point Pleasant. So the town is odd. It's not like a big city or very sophisticated, nothing. Hardworking people. Then you have 13 months, right? That weird number, 13, to the day, November 15th, 66 to December 15th, 67. And then the bridge goes down and 46 people die. And that is reality. And from that moment when the sightings stop, pretty much, there's still people who say, oh, I saw this, I saw that. Tanya, of course, had our very, very odd experience, which wasn't Mothman. So the portals are still active. They're still there. But what was this thing and why did it go away? And was it a harbinger? Why was it giving a warning?
Again, though, imagine the energy set off by the bridge collapse.
Absolutely.
And all the people, passing away, and then the sorrow, and then even the joy when you find out your family member did not pass. There's all that stuff. Maybe that energy then was enough to open something up and send the Mothman back to wherever and then the next thing came in.
It could very well be, the bridge was moved upriver and Point Pleasant nearly died until this movie, that gets made because of John Keel's book. You're absolutely right as far as that goes. And now all of the energy that is given to it that keeps it alive. I have been hired over the years to write different formats and different stories to tell the story. And I've consulted with television shows and all of this. And what I say to everyone is Point Pleasant selects the people it needs to keep telling its story, and it draws them there. And that is an energy center. Yeah.
Well, imagine the energy that comes there just for the Mothman Festival.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and it's all like positive, excited. I'm so glad, it's all, so geez. Yeah, I think we could have like 10 shows because I don't even know, I don't even think I got to scratch the surface of half the stuff. I wanted to ask you as we went along. But yeah, we'll have to do this again because
Please,
I think we could definitely go off on a couple tangents.
Cool.
But I want you to tell everybody then where they can find your podcast and find your books, and if they need to hire you for some Mothman stuff, how they can do that too.
Yeah, cool. So it's really easy. I'm on every social media platform you can think of, and just search Joey Madia, Madia, and then my show is called Into the Outer Realms. This Thursday, it's every Thursday night, 7 p.m. And this week I'm doing the 1940s, so I'm really going to deep dive into why 1947. And again, I know we're wrapping up, but Jack Parsons, who was at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, was very close with L. Ron Hubbard. He did a magical sex work where they had a baby that was kept at Los Alamos during that same time frame. So maybe they opened up a portal, right? So we will have to talk again. So Joey Madia, JoeyMadia, not like Tyler Perry's movie, which is Medea. Tyler, don't get angry. I was born with the name, and it's different. And then, it's called Into the Outer Realms. And then you can find that on YouTube, either through Joey Madia or at Every Day is a Story. And that'll take you right there. And it's every Thursday night. And you can see I've had a lot of cool guests. And my books are on Amazon. So I have an Amazon author page, fiction and nonfiction books, about a dozen of them now. So, yeah.
I'm totally jealous. I think you're living the life that most of us wish we could in the paranormal.
If I am, it's totally by accident. I just have met some really cool people, and so thanks, Ed. Thanks for having me on. Thank you to Emily, if Emily's listening, for putting us together.
She better be listening. Yeah. No, I appreciate us finally being able to get together, and this has been great. I think our listeners will love this, and they'll be going, "Hey, when's he coming back?" I'm cool. I'm sure I'll get some of that, but this has been fascinating. And the funny thing is, I came in going, okay, we're going to talk a lot about Mothman, but we really, there's so much other stuff around it. And I think that's what people do realize they love the idea of the Mothman, but what's ever going on in Point Pleasant is way, 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 way more than just the Mothman. He's just getting all the publicity from
That's
it.
right.
Everybody.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, Joey, thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to the next time.
Cool. Me too. Yeah. Please reach out. I'd love to do it again if that's what your audience wants.
I'm sure they will. I'm sure they will.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the From the Shadows podcast. Until next time, never shy away from the darkness or what may be lurking in the shadows. We are out.